Please be informed that this will be a recorded session, especially for the guest presentation and the panelist session. Now, it is our honor to invite Dr. Hamdan Majid, Managing Director of Think City, to deliver the opening remarks. Everyone, please join me to welcome Dr. Hamdan Majid.
Distinguished guests, partners, friends from civil society and fellow advocates from Southeast Asia. I'm very happy to be here at this, what you call ASEAN People's Forum, on the sidelines of the ASEAN heads of governments meeting today. It's a very important, I would call, a moment in history that we are, as we move into the coming years. A lot of the issues that we're deliberating today are going to be changed realities that we will be facing. So, I'll start with a very good afternoon, and I think it's my honor to open this important conversation today at ASEAN People's Forum. This session, Strengthening the Southeast Asia's, where collaboration meets climate adaptation, marks not only the pre-launch of the second SEACAR report, but also a reaffirmation of why we are all here to protect our shared future together. Before I begin, I'd like to express our sincere appreciation to Pusat Khomas, the main organizer of the ASEAN People's Forum, for the commendable work in curating such a well-organized and impactful program over the 2 days that is taking place here. I would also like to extend our heartfelt thanks to the Climate Action Network Southeast Asia for the kind invitation and for sharing this meaningful space with us. I'm here on behalf of the SEACAR Alliance that is representing the Boston Consulting Group, the World Wildlife Fund, and ourselves in Think City. This platform provides not just space but purpose for the conversation we need to have. Ladies and gentlemen, Southeast Asia is probably, I think all of you all know, is one of the what I call highly vulnerable climate zone in the world. IPCC report as one of the the top two highly impacted zones. And what we will see in Southeast Asia is that we will see climate that's never been seen in human history before. And we're already feeling it today. In the recent past, we have seen the impact of climate and the devastating effect that it is having, whether it's typhoons in Philippines, the floods in Vietnam, the heat impact and drought that we are seeing in mainland Southeast Asia, as well as the impact of floods that we are seeing in the archipelago nations of Southeast Asia. And more now, we're also seeing the impact of sea level rises. While Southeast Asia is not only diverse in terms of its population, it's also is one of the mega diverse regions of the world. But in the immediate next 25 years, it is expected that 35% of the region's GDP may be at risk due to climate impact. In fact, the forecast is that Southeast Asia will see its GDP shrink by 10% as a result of climate impact. Half of our population and over 4,000 species face threats from increasingly severe floods, rising sea levels, droughts, and extreme heat. And yet, despite the scale of the challenge, our preparedness remains dangerously low. Now, I believe we are all conscious people. We know the issues of climate, sustainable development, and the need to progress, achieve economic progress on the basis of reducing the climate environmental impact. And that has been the focal point over the last 50 years. Today, we are now, even though over the last 50 years, from when I first read The Limits to Growth in 1912 of Rome, and what we have come to today, the issues of climate has been debated, the issues of environment has been debated, the need for protection of environment, the need to have more sustainable development has been conversed, but very little progress is being seen. So much so that I would call that house is now burning. Previously, it was not. We anticipated it to burn. Today, it's burning. While we are conversing here, and the conversation is taking place in many rooms, unfortunately, as civil actors or individual groups, we are limited in our action. And I think that's one of, I will call, the challenge of this age that we are faced with, the fragmentation of voice, fragmentation of our efforts, and fragmentation of results. So much so that we are needing to figure out how do we shape collective action? How do we amplify action? How do we actually influence and shape the direction of how we see our societies and how we will need to face and adapt to change, adapt to climate change. Climate change is no longer a conversation about a distant future, but it's a present reality. Unfortunately, and this is very unfortunate, it is a conversation that is having, I would call, limited action. Action that matters. While there's a lot of things being talked about, deliberated, whether it's in the ASEAN level, we know there's not much has progressed. While in the individual countries, while there's a lot of things that's being done with the NDCs and climate change acts and others, but will this change the reality of facing climate, the climate impact? We have seen one of the largest countries in the world, the major polluter, the energy consumer, has now chosen to exit the climate discussions. And in fact, the claim of saying that this is all climate hoax. And we live in that reality whereby that this is going to be the challenge of this decade or in the coming decades. The fact that the manifestation of what we see in reality versus the greed and the continued hunger of those who are capital owners and probably some level those who are in power. And I think that's a question that we got to ask. How do we then mobilize action at the grassroots level that will have meaningful impact? I think that is the spirit on why when we came together, and that's when I remember sitting down with Lavanya and a few other friends, and we were in Sharm el Sheikh. It was my first experience of being in Cork, and I felt, what the hell are we doing in this room? There were 60,000 people, and everyone was conversing, but the house is burning outside, and we are in the verge of collapse. And we know that this whole thing about biodiversity collapse, environmental collapse, everything has been no longer a prediction, but it's happening in front of us. In Kuala Lumpur, we see temperatures that are soaring and hitting 40 degrees in a very high humid levels, which only means that temperatures that we are seeing has never been seen before in the last 100 years or even 1,000 years. And this is the kind of things that we are seeing in Kuala Lumpur. We also see the climate impact when an incident of rain, intense rain, puts a city in standstill. Uh, so this is not only what I call the challenge that we face on a day-to-day basis, but that we are caught in an inaction. Action, because I only said inaction because whatever we are doing today is not moving the needle. And that's the reality that we are needing to face. So we came together, we realized that we're not moving anywhere. We said, why can't we work to bring together non-state actors? So we said we launched in 2020 COP28. And SEACAR exists to promote bold, coordinated action across the region, action grounded in the realities of cities and communities where the impacts of climate change are felt most immediately and most acutely. SEACAR focuses on 6 essential pillars: natural ecosystems, infrastructure, agriculture, health, water, and trade. But today we are here to do more than talk about threats. We are here to spotlight solutions. Hope you'll be hearing more of this today. And more importantly, people-powered solutions. Because the only constant that is going to happen is that grassroots change, the one that can bring impact. And we have seen revolutions emerge from grassroots, whether it's what we have seen in history and what we also see today. In this new report that we will be launching, you'll find stories of courage, creativity, collective action. You will hear how mangrove restoration in Indonesia's Manggarai district is reducing flood risk while empowering women. You will discover how community-driven efforts in Bukit Kera are protecting urban biodiversity right in the heart of Kuala Lumpur. And you will see how cutting-edge climate models developed right here in Malaysia are helping local government take smarter, more resilient decisions. These are not theoretical exercises, these are real world examples of nature based solutions in community adaptation that are already saving lives, protecting livelihoods, and restoring hope. But we must scale this effort and we must do so urgently. Nature alone cannot do the work. We need to pair it with also to technology. How do we harness the use of technology in the right way that can enable us to accelerate and deal with the complexities of the issues that we face here today? And here, the SEACAR report introduces an advanced technological solutions for climate, a new frontier in adaptation, using advanced technologies such as artificial intelligence to simulate climate risk and quantify the cost of inaction. This approach is helping cities prioritize investments, build early warning systems, and identify the most vulnerable population. We believe that with data and evidence and actively, bringing this information to the grassroots and conscientizing people, we could have greater collective action in shaping the behavior that we need, of how we need to live in the future. Just as crucially, trade, the lifeblood of regional economy, must be seen as part of the solution. With Southeast Asia set to become the fourth largest economy in the world by 2030, we have the opportunity to turn the interconnectedness into a source of strength. Trade policies can drive access to climate resilient technologies, foster foreign investment in adaptation infrastructure, and create economies of scale for clean innovation. So it's not only about mitigation that is important, which we have seen there's a lot of progress, but on the front of adaptation, there's much to be done, particularly on nature-based solution. But none of this will happen without you. I believe the civil society leaders who are in the room here, community organizers, youth activists, scientists, and local governments. Your voices, your lived experience, and your leadership are what makes SEACAR more than a report. You make it a movement. The forum is a reminder that adaptation must be locally led but regionally supported. We must listen to one another, learn from one another, and act together. Um, and I was just speaking to Lavanya a short while ago. I said that what I've observed is that mainstream corporates, mainstream institutions have, I would probably say that, step forward to embrace, as we see the language of ESG and SDGs, and we can see how the importance of not shareholder economy, but stakeholder economy. But that's also a warning sign. The mainstream is adopting, but making sure that they are in control of the narrative. And I think we should not lose this battle. We should step forward. We should take charge and bring change that we desire. So let this keynote not be a conclusion, but a beginning. Let's ensure that what we discuss today becomes policy tomorrow and practice the day after. Because the future of Southeast Asia is not written yet. It is being shaped right now by the choices we make and the coalitions we build. Thank you, and let's move forward with courage, clarity, and collaboration.
With that, we are now pleased to welcome our guest speaker, Ms. Vivian Soon from the Malaysia Nature Society MNS. Ms. Vivian Soon is a wildlife and conservation officer at the Malaysia Nature Society, currently leading the community-driven Ratayan Urban Green Spaces Rugs initiative. She plays a key role in the proposal development and project planning, blending scientific research and practical conservation to protect and reconnect Klang Valley's fragmented green spaces through nature-based solutions.
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. So I hope you are all still awake to listen to my presentation and later on another panel discussion. So my name is Vivian. I'm the Wildlife and Conservation Officer from the Malaysian Nature Society. And first and foremost, I would like to thank the organizers, Pasal Thomas, for organizing the ASEAN People's Forum, and also to the SEACAR Alliance, particularly WWF-Malaysia, for reaching out to WWF for us to have this opportunity today to share with you a topic that's close to our hearts in MNS currently, something that we're working on really hard with the local communities and community and the CSOs on the ground. So it's called the Reconnecting Urban Green Spaces through Community-Led Initiatives of the Bali. So we have a lot of technical talks earlier, so probably my presentation is going to bring us back to the core to realize on what we are fighting for right now. So as Southeast Asia, we're urbanizing very rapidly. We're losing our forests to built environments, and with that, we are facing intensifying climate threats such as heat waves, floods, and we're also experiencing frequent extreme weather pattern changes and also biodiversity loss. And to support our ever-growing population, we need economic growth to support our people. So our green spaces over here in the forest, it can be gardens and parks. They're all increasingly being replaced by concrete jungle instead of green jungle. For large-scale developments, for residential areas, for more industrial zones, and it's turning our natural landscape in Southeast Asia, which we are known for being like a tropical region rich in biodiversity, and it's slowly turning into an urban sprawl instead. And its persistent land use change has transformed our natural landscape into a built environment that is degrading our important ecosystem services, such as from our blue and green spaces, which includes, which supports ecological processes over here, such as the forest that acts as natural sponge for water retention, to purify our water, and also to regulate our hydrological cycles, and also acts as a natural defense against flood and landslides. But also not just that, also to suppress the carbon in our area, and also to support biodiversity conservation by providing habitat for the wildlife to migrate from one place to another. And with the fragmentation of our green spaces, our wildlife are like stuck in this tiny little pocket of island that they are unable to move to another green space for mating to find food resources, which greatly impacts their population health as well. Yeah, which leads to the fact that our urban green spaces or green spaces in general, forests and parks are a very important genetic reservoir for flora and fauna. And if we lose these remaining green spaces, we will risk further ecological collapse or is what I learned this morning from Dr. Niti, which is what's it gonna wait, let me find the word.
Oh, planet insolvency.
Yes, planetary insolvency. Yes. So which means when our Earth's ecosystem services have degraded so badly that we threaten the well-being of the people in this area, which is us. Yeah. Okay. So, recognizing all these challenges, communities across the region have have been stepping up to reconnect all these fragmented green spaces, especially in our urban area, using nature-based solutions. And these are not just to beautify our cities, but to help us to adapt to climate impacts in ways that are nature-based, innovative, and also locally driven. So in Malaysia, I would like to share that one of the initiatives is the RUPS initiative, or it's called Rantayan Urban Green Spaces. Rantayan in Malay means chain, so it's a chain of green spaces, reconnecting all these green spaces to form an intact forest landscape. So to achieve this ambitious goal, RUPS, not just evidence, but we are also working with a lot of other local communities on the ground to realize this vision of reconnecting the green spaces. And this is in Klang Valley, which is like the urban hub of Malaysia. And through the RUPS project, we employ 4 main strategies. One of it is, of course, protecting the green spaces through policies and also engagement with stakeholders that includes the policymakers and also people on the ground. Both we try to reconnect not just the green space, but also between the people to protect our existing green spaces. And secondly, is through building ecological connectivity. This is by increasing tree cover or the expansion of our existing green spaces, and also encourage the growth of community gardens and parks, and in creating wildlife corridors through existing infrastructures that we already have. And that leads to urban design. So having green urban planning, to encourage green buildings at rooftop gardens, green roofs, or also using existing interstitial spaces around the areas to become a space that supports both urban biodiversity and urban resilience. And lastly, through physical connectivity, that is for us to enjoy the green space as a recreational activity. So these are some of the green spaces that we have left in Klang Valley, although it's very sparse. But all these little green spaces, they form the pocket parks that become stepping stones for not just the wildlife, but also for people that reconnects to the intact forest landscape. In this case, it's to the northeastern part of Selangor, where our Selangor State Park is located. So And through the rocks project, restoration initiatives are taking root within the local communities, not just by eminence, but also by the communities living on the ground themselves. Local groups, they are actively involved in restoration, replanting, or safeguarding of their green corridors within their space. And this helps to reconnect our fragmented ecosystems while also enhancing the livability of the area. And let me share another two examples within this landscape that showcase such initiative, community-led initiative. So one of it is called the Urban Orchard Pilot Report. So this urban orchard is located within a riparian zone, so right next to a river/drainage area. So it started by Mr. Yan Masari, or locally, we call him Uncle Yan. So Uncle Yan started this orchard right next to the Malay Cemetery as an honor to his son, who is buried there. So he started first, just to be close to his son, so he started planting fruit trees around the area. But as the fruit trees start to grow, he sees that this is something that he can do here, restore the area to make it more beneficial for the local communities around the area. So now it's like a whole maybe 2 km stretch of urban orchard that the local communities around the area will volunteer weekly to not just for recreation, but also to enjoy the fruits of this area. And another initiative is like Kampung Bangsa. So you might not know this, but this farm is located underneath a utility pylon. So we have a long stretch of utility pylon that is undeveloped, mostly unused apart from the maintenance of our utility. So Kampung Bangsa has took up this area and has started a permaculture farm under this area, so that they not just rehabilitate the area, but the local people around this area can also enjoy and do their farming around this area under the utility pylon. So both of those projects are powerful examples of how community can reclaim our fragmented urban land and transform that into restorative urban green spaces. But if we expand our view on the ASEAN region, we can also see other community-led urban initiatives. For example, here in Vietnam, there's a non-profit organization called Green Viet that focus on conserving ecosystem and endangered species. And here they are leading a 10-year initiative from 2020 to 2030 to plant 1 million trees in a city. That includes major cities across Vietnam, like Hanoi, Da Nang, and Ho Chi Minh. And this initiative aims to address the urban greening gaps and also to improve livability in the cities. And they integrate scientific research, community participations, and this is through replanting of trees around the city area, also awareness program with schools, and also, as I mentioned, scientific research, how to improve the city. And another example is Green Lungs Hanoi. So this is a volunteer-led initiative by a group of architects. So they are planning to rehabilitate a Banana Island, which is an island in Hanoi, where they want to reconnect both of these areas, which is separated by a bridge. And in Indonesia, we've seen how restoration is transforming urban green space, but reconnecting this space is not just linking ecosystems, but also linking the people and also rebuilding relationship with nature. So this is where I go back to that comes in that promotes citizen participation and collective action in urban planning. So they provide a lot of different programs and projects with the local communities to build their resilience towards climate change impacts. And in Thailand, there's the Urban Resilience and Building Nature project, which is supported by ASEAN Thailand, which involves a few organizations, ADPC, Recall, Thailand Environmental Institute, and UDDC. So this project aims to fully implement the global nature-based solution standard, which is developed by IUCN. And the key outcomes include conducting climate risk and vulnerability assessment, design and implement nature-based solution on the ground, and also integrate the NBS standards into their local policies. So I know there are many other initiatives across Southeast Asia that I'm unable to cover today, and because most of these are led by communities themselves, which really do the work on the ground, and that when they do the work on the ground, they don't really focus a lot of publicity, which is why there's not much that I can find online as well. Because I believe that those people are really, really genuine in their work. They just want to help out in the in protecting their green space. And with that being said, without intentional planning to integrate ecological connectivity into our green spaces, they will just remain isolated patch that's vulnerable and remain unable to sustain biodiversity or climate resilience in the long run. So to prevent further ecosystem loss, we need to prioritize the utilization of nature-based solutions in restoring our connectivity towards an intact forest landscape. And ultimately, the way forward lies in integrating nature-based solution into urban planning and to help raise public awareness and strengthen our policy framework, as well as using different tools like remote sensing or GIS to help guide us towards these strategic interventions. Right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Vivian, for reminding us that change often starts at the community level. Now, let us begin our presentation session where we hear directly from the voices behind SEACAR's upcoming second report. We are pleased to have Ms. Lavanya Rama here from WWF-Malaysia to moderate the rest of the session. I welcome Ms. Lavanya as well as our panelists, Dr. Liew Neng, Ms. Aristia Fathah, and Dr. Kribanandan Gurusamy Naidu to do their presentations.
Okay, thank you so much everyone for being here, and a very good afternoon. And thanks very much to the organizers, Pusat Komas, also BOPA, who are the funders, and to the organizers of this session, headed by Hansi and Niti, for having such a vibrant session going on. I would like to now move on quickly to our next segment of this event, which is the panel session. So what we will be doing now, following that really interesting presentation by our guest speaker, Vivian, thank you so much. But it's highlighted how nature we can work with nature, right, for our own benefit ultimately, rather than destroy nature again to our detriment. The panel session here will tell us in more detail, I think, how we can actually empower ourselves, as Dr. Hamdan from Think Setting eventually his keynote. How can we start actually doing action? And really, the action has to come from ground up, from the communities. So we are really pleased today to showcase 3 examples today, which will be featured in the report that Dr. Hamdan mentioned earlier. The second SEACAR report, which will be launched. This is a sort of sneak preview, if you like. And our panelists today will give you some insights into what you will be seeing in the report. They are 3 authors of this report. So it's my great pleasure to introduce you to the 3 of them. The first one is Dr. Neng Liew from University Kebangsaan Malaysia. He's an associate professor and part of the technical team for this project called the Coordinated Regional Climate Downscaling Experiment in Southeast Asia, or in short, CODEX SEA, Southeast Asia. CODEX SEA contributes to high-resolution climate projections that inform policy and adaptation strategies across the region. This might sound very technical, but I assure you Dr. Liew's work is very much relevant to all the work that we are doing, and they have done some remarkable work in downscaling what we call the climate models right down to the areas that matter to us, right down to city scale. Next, we will have Ms. Aristia Fathah, who's come all the way from Jakarta, Indonesia. She's the climate programming focal point from the Indonesian Red Cross. She supports the organization's mission by providing humanitarian aid and fostering community resilience across Indonesia. We'll hear fascinating work that they have been doing on the ground with communities, with nature to build resilience. Last but not least, good friend, Engineer Dr. Kribanandan Gurusamy Naidu, who is the immediate past president for Friends of Bukit Kiara. Now, if you saw the last image from Vivian's slide, that is actually where he comes from. And during his presidency, he helped push for the partial gazettement of Bukit Kiara, led projects to document the unique biodiversity of Bukit Kiara, and developed the narrative for the protection of the green lung. So we are really honored to have this very knowledgeable panel with us today. So without further ado, let's begin with our first speaker. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Neng Liew. Dr. Liew?
Okay, so basically, what I'm, going to spend the time 6 minutes and 8 minutes. I'll be talking about projects that we are currently working on, which I think contributed to adaptation planning. So what I'm advocating here is basically there is a need to make use of this climate information. So as we know, the impact of climate change actually felt quite differently at the different places around the world. So the impact will be different in East Malaysia, West Malaysia, and different parts of the Southeast Asia. So the felt impact will be different. Right. So this is basically a little introductions about modeling work that we have been doing. So basically, this kind of future climates, how the future climate will evolve is basically produced by a category of models we call the general spatial models. So basically, that take into account the assumptions of how the emissions is going to be, how the concentrations of greenhouse gases is going to evolve in the future. So we take that, pump the information into the global climate models, projected futures. But that kind of models actually produce a very coarse information. So it's not sufficient for us to make decisions at a local levels. And we know that applications is actually need to be adaptation design need to be designed locally. So it depends on and also you got to various sectors, so from sector to sector that's what we call a downscaling. So you bring the cost information to a fine granular informations, right? And then you use that informations to make decisions. Okay, so why is it called Connect South Asia? Because it's a global initiative as being controlled by World Climate Research Programs and the World Meteorological Organizations. Right. There are currently 14 different domains covering almost every part of the land surface over the Earth. So the Connect South Asia is just one of them. And so we work with a lot of scientists actually. So there are a bunch of organizations that we work with, and mostly as our collaborators. So we share modeling technologies. We share working examples on how to talk to the BIA community because vulnerability impact adaptation community. So those kind of working experience is something that we build. So we work together with a lot of organizations. Right. So if you are interested, basically, a little bit of where we use this sort of information. So obviously, if you read the PCC Working Group 1 report, or Group 2 report, you can find a lot of this information produced by Cortex. If you read chapter 10 to 12, they're there, right? And if for those of you who would like to have a quick look at the data, the IPCC actually has an interactive atlas. So there is a interactive online system where you can go and you can select the data as select variables that you're interested in, for example, temperatures, rainfalls. Then you can create a maps and have a look at your area of interest. So why is it? So just as I mentioned earlier, so the impact is very different. Even the same increments of, let's say, for example, increments of surface temperatures of 2 degrees centigrade would mean differently for different sectors. If you're working in the agriculture, it may mean differently. If you're working in the ecotourism industry, it would mean different impacts, right? So you need to assess them by sectors and by regions and localities, right? Yeah, there's a bit of challenges. I think as of now, we don't really have a specific guidelines on how people should use this. And therefore, if you read the literatures, there are a lot of sporadic examples of how all these things how this kind of data is used of, and sometimes you find consistency between them that can create quite a bit of confusions, right? And then the knowledge sometimes sometimes the what the policy makers is expecting, right, is quite different than what we produce, right? And then if you tell them that climate projections is something subject to uncertainties, or the word uncertainties is something that people don't like to hear, right? But that's something that you have to live with if you're talking about estimating what is the futures. Right? So understanding, I think the only way is for us to understand the uncertainties and live with that. All right. So you want to make a decision, basically you are taking risk. And the risk is something that you express in probabilities, so you can't run away from uncertainties. Right. And also some technicalities. So with this data sets being produced, it occupies the storage, it gives you a sort of scale, so tens of hundreds of petabytes. Right. So to extract the correct information from there is difficult. So you need some kind of technicalities to do that. But of course, we do not expect everybody to to have that ability to do that. So there is a need to have a close collaboration with for us coming from a technology community. So we need to work a lot with the users to understand their needs and try to work together. So, but that also brings us to another problem, which is the human resources. All right, in different sectors, different localities, you do need some kind of customized products to guide the decision. So that's the complexities which we have been trying to solve from time to time. So I guess that's a bit of sharing from my side.
Thank you so much, Dr. Liew, for your insightful presentation. I think, there's no crystal ball, but the work you're doing at least gives us some ideas of what the future holds so that we can then apply things like what our next speakers are going to tell us about, making a more informed manner. Yeah. So with that, and I'm sure you'll have questions. Please hold on to them. We'll get to them shortly. Now, it gives me great pleasure to invite Ms. Aristia Fathah to please share your work with us.
Okay. Thank you, Maya. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm TF on mention that course. So, in this session, I will share our experience about the nature-based approach to the community learning to aid project by the Gurusamy Red Cross, supported by FLECP and American Red Cross. Okay. So as you can see in the screen, Gurusamy Red Cross has been implementing the ACBR project, integrated community-based reduction, with the American Red Cross since the 2017. And in this project, Manggarai is one of our project areas. And we choose Manggarai because it's heavily prone to disaster, especially floods and climate change issues. And one of the outcomes of the project is to enhance community capacity on disaster risk management. So, Manggarai already implemented the SBR project on the phase 2. On the phase 2 starting from 2020. And they already implemented for 2 years. And they already established SIBAT, the community-based action team. And we can call it like community volunteers. And they also conducted the VCA, risk mapping, and SBR planning, and etc. And then we saw the potential possibility to sustainability in this project. And then on the third year, the project was extended on the bursary, and we call it Kota project. And in this area, we choose 5 villages in the watershed area. And the first step we took on this nature-based approach was the assessment and study. In this time, we collaborate with the consultant experts from the university, and based on the result and based from the SBR phase 2, we get the recommendation for the ecosystem rehabilitation and implementation design by the engineering and planting vegetation. So the consultant helped us to identify the vegetation variety and the need for vegetation plant seeds on the watershed area, and also the design for the planting plan in each village project. And after that, due to the lack of the awareness and the knowledge for the community, we prepare them with the socialization and technical training. And the training included like the treatment, nursery house, and planting and ecosystem rehabilitation, also with the alternative livelihood and policy development. And then in the implementation, we had 5 main activities. The first one is nursery houses, and then planting plan, and then the technical guidelines, and carbon stock measurement, and the last is mangrove center. So in the nursery house, we built the nursery house in each village, managed by the community volunteers, and they purchase the seeds based on the training they receive on the portrait steps. And the plants grow in the nursery house will be planted to the watershed area and coastal and also the forest mangrove. When we plant the when we do the planting plan, we had unpredictable experience, like the livestock in the locale. They ate our planting plan. So we decide to make the technical guidelines and agreement with the local government and communities, such as the village regulation, policies and river basin area protection, and DRR policy. In the carbon stock measurement, we carry out this with involving the SIBAT, the community. And this is to empowering and disseminating knowledge to the community so they can aware and they can measure the carbon around them. Yeah, and during the carbon stock measurement, we found the red mangrove, and it's almost extinct based on the IUCN. So we decide and we keep try to looking for the opportunity to sustainability in these nature-based solutions. And we decide to build the mangrove center in the Manggarai, mangrove center. And this mangrove center, they managed by 2 villages in our project area. And this mangrove center can be useful for the education and the tourism spot. And then we come to the last slide about implementation. I just want to show you about the whole measurement process. This one. You can see this thing. So we can see that community volunteers is main actor, and they play the main role to the nature-based approach implementation. Then move to the last slide. Yeah, we come to the challenge. As you know, the nature-based solutions result cannot we cannot see the result quickly, and we have to follow my temperament and see the result. And then the community behavior and education. We had some experience like some people continue to dispose the waste in the rivers, and there is lack of awareness also from the communities and the local we have also the local conflict, like some community members claim the ownership about the land. So when we plan the planting plans, sometimes they just and they just ignore, and they just claim that this is our land and you cannot plan in here. And then the economic sustainability, the alternative livelihoods we address, and it's still the small scale, and this initiative had yet to make a significant impact. And then the governance and policy support. In this challenge, we get some complex goals from the government, and especially in the branch and province, and also the further promoting the governance and also policy. We we see that it's difficult due to the limited agency support for the nature-based solution and then extended impact. Yeah, some vegetation that we planted that due to the lack of water. Okay, I think that's all from me. Thank you guys for the lecture.
Thank you very much, Aristia. And it's really wonderful to see, this very uh, impressive work that you all are doing. You're a humanitarian organization now working with nature to protect people. Thank you for taking us through the comprehensive approach that you have taken also, and all the different aspects that we need to look at, right? There's action for implementation, there's regulations also, capacity building, there's also advocacy. So, yeah, I think it's given us a good idea of how, the things that we may need to think about also when we embark on projects like this. Now, it would be wonderful to hear our next speaker tell us about bottom-up approach by the community themselves. So it gives me great pleasure now to hand the floor to Dr. Kriban. Over to you.
Thank you. Just getting the slides up. Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. It's always difficult being the last speaker, but we will make some progress. As the one has already mentioned, my name is Kribanandan. I'm the immediate past president of Friends of Kiara, and I'm basically going to be talking to you about the federal park and how, as a community, we have brought together quite a lot of change and looking at nature-based solutions and how this impacts our livelihood. The title of the talk is on the screen, so let me begin. So just to give you context, okay. Just to give you context, for those of you who are not from Kuala Lumpur, you can see there is an icon on the map on the left on Petronas Twin Towers. We're just here, and if you go left or you go west on a straight line, you can see that there is a green and red marking, and that's where Bukit Kiara is, some 10 kilometers from here as the crow flies. So it gives you a bit of an idea. On the also in that image, you can see that there are many contiguous green lungs, both sides of Bukit Kiara. And on the right, there is a representation of those green lungs, and they are all labeled, as you can see. We actually did a project in 2022 to look at the interconnectivity of these green lungs as an idea. It also started to connect with various communities working with green lungs around the Klang Valley as part of the UNDP project. In fact, this was in fact the start or the precursor to the REX project, which Vivian was talking to you about a little while ago. And so we initiated this idea some years earlier, and then MLS is taking it over to move forward. So let me just carry on. Sorry. Yeah. Okay, yeah. All right, so we're going to be talking to you, I'm going to be talking to you today about the Bukit Kiara Federal Park. This park has got a very interesting history. It goes back to the early 1900s, in fact, when this land was alienated as a rubber plantation during the British colonial times, taken over by British planters. So the area which is demarcated with the white dotted lines is something like 621 hectares. Or for those of you who are more familiar with acres, it's 1,535 acres. So it's a very large area. This is what was designated. And as part of the process of formation of Kuala Lumpur, many of these estates were acquired, and so Kiara was one of them. And in the case of Kiara, it was actually occupied for a public purpose. And the intended creation of a public park, a natural mausoleum, and also a arboretum in this area. In fact, the arboretum was going to be the largest portion of this land. Unfortunately, the aims of this as being for public purpose gave way to development. And over the years, there was quite a lot of encroachment into the greenland. And what we have left now is only 400 acres, or 25% of that whole, land. And you can see that it's demarcated that the colors in green and red. The green coloration is in fact the piece of land which was gazetted in 2020. The red pieces will be gazetted in 2027, or we're fighting to get it gazetted then when the leases, the private leases which are given up, expire. Right? So we're hoping that within the next 2 or 3 years, this whole site will be gazetted as one 400-acre site or 162 hectares. But as the years went by, there was this plan to do a public park, mausoleum, and arboretum was actually drawn up in 1982. Cabinet actually appointed an American architect to come up with this whole plan, beautiful plan. And unfortunately, as I say, it didn't materialize. Just to put this into context, we always associate New York with the park, the Central Park. And the Central Park is 835 acres. So half the size of this original Bukit Kiara. So imagine if we had gone ahead with this process of creating this park and arboretum and so on, this would have been one of the biggest natural parks in the world, actually, urban park. Unfortunately, that was not the case, but we are now. So what's really happened is the community has come together and said enough is enough. We need to do it. We need to protect this remaining greenland. And this is what has led to the formation of the Friends of Bukit Kiara, formalized in 2014. But actually, the community action goes back much earlier in the history of this greenland. So what's there? There is the source of 3 rivers. It is a public park which people use very much, and there's also now an arboretum zone. It's also a lot of hiking trails and biking trails. In fact, we're told the biking trails here in Kiara are one of the most sought after in Asia. And then it's a very popular destination for families and so on. So something like 7,000 people come to this park during the weekend to have recreation and so on. So it's a very popular space and something which we hope we can protect for future generations. Over the last many years, in fact, we have been documenting the wildlife in the park. And as you can see, there's birds, there's butterflies, herpetofauna, mammals, and so on. Some of these mammals are in fact endangered species. But what was really very interesting is that in 2018, through a chance, observation, we found that there were fireflies in Bukit Kiara. And fireflies create a lot of interest, and we realized this. So we've used this as our our charismatic species, our go-to species, and have developed a very large community-based organization, citizen science approach and so on, to try and bring people to the Greenland and get them to buy in, if you like, into the importance of this particular gem in the urban setting. So in terms of the fireflies, we've done a lot of work. The citizen science approach started with a funded project, UNDP, in 2021 rather. And over the last 4 to 5 years, that project has become done by volunteers. We have citizen scientists, over 400 people who have been involved over the last few years. And these are some of the records which we are basically showing. You can see that there are lots of records around pathways, but we have lots of records which we don't already have because, once you go away from the trails, it becomes quite dangerous, particularly in the night, because you have to do surveys of fireflies only after hours. So we hope that we avoid it. So we have discovered 8 species of fireflies up to 2024. What has been most exciting is that in the last 1 month, we discovered a new firefly species, the 9th one, called Gombakian. And what is really exciting about this is that this firefly species has not been seen in Malaysia or anywhere in the world for the last 100 years. The last sighting was, in fact, in Gombak in 2023. So we think it's a very big deal, and we are using this, and many of the data we've gathered over the last years, particularly since 2018, as a basis on which to enhance the protection agenda for the Greenland. We've also mobilized quite a few of the universities. You can see that a lot of publications that come out from the data in Vivian. And all of this is really helping us to tell a story about how important this space is and why it should be protected. In fact, you will see in this previous drawing, right at the bottom there, it says proposed developments. This is where one of the major developers in the country who own the golf course are intending to do a major high-rise development, and we are basically trying to stop this because I think any development in this area will affect the biodiversity of this whole Greenland, and this is something which we really sincerely don't want to happen. Even with that, there was so much ferocity of water and so on in the rivers. And we were quite convinced that not for the Greenland and not for this 400 acres and North Kiara, another few hundred acres, Tamantur would have been flooded. There's no doubt about it. In fact, the Jalan Segambut Dalam on the opposite side of the hill wasn't so fortunate. In that part of the hill, there was a lot more developments, a lot more of clearing of the Greenland. And as you can see, they've had flood incidents, year after year, with a lot of damage. And these are some of the things which I think nature-based solutions can really be very important. And I think we hope that this will be given the kind of notice which is required, so that particularly in terms of flooding, I think it can become a very important part of the solution, long-term solution, for the billions and billions we are spending trying to relieve the communities of this problem. I won't go through all of these points in conclusion because of time, but just to say the very last point then, I think as we speak, there is the National Adaptation Plan being currently developed and conceived, and I think our appeal is that somehow we must get CBOs like us and others to become part of that process, so that we can look at our inclusive, locally owned adaptation efforts, which can be shared with lessons learned for where it's actually needed. So on that note, I thank you for your attention, and I hope we can have a further dialogue after this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kriban, and really fascinating to see how, all the passion that the community bottom-up approach put into this because of your love for nature also paid back in terms of protecting all of you from, much more severe impacts in that really extreme case of flooding in 2021 here in Klang Valley in Malaysia. Now, I had a lot of questions for the panelists, but I would like to open it up to all of you first because I think we are unfortunately running short of time. So please, any questions? Yes. Please identify yourself and just very quick questions, please, because of the time constraint.
Me? I think this is Arun, the Executive Director of the NGO Forum of Cambodia, also part of CANC. Very, very interesting, all these panelists for sharing such impressive best practices on the nature-based solutions. I personally and family driven also really use the way community led initiative using the ground, how to mobilize resources to build ecosystem at the ground. But the challenges is the legal framework and the behavioral change within the communities, members, and the policies are disconnected. Just like to learn from you how you really communicate this and minimize the gaps. And because without policy support and behavioral change, then the initiative might not be long lasting. I think.
Let me take a few questions, Madam, and then yourselves.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm Sandra from Humanis. Quick questions. Among your initiatives that basically works with nature, with communities in nature-based solutions, I wonder where is the government role in it? Where is the government participation? Do they chip in? If yes, then to what certain extent? Because I see that a lot of work being done by yourself, civil societies, and university, of course, but I cannot see where is the government there. Thanks.
Gentlemen.
Yes, thank you. I'm from Initiative Indonesia. One NGO focus on local budget analysis and advocacy. Same with Sandra, but more specific about the local budget, district and village. How the role, the specific role, the budget, local budget in that ecosystem, the program. Because in Indonesia, in decentralization context, the village in Indonesia have a sufficient budget to create a creative program to solve the local problem. Thank you.
Yes, I'm Rita Ligan from the Philippines. But amazing work. But what I see also based on the both stories from Indonesia and Malaysia is that these are not really being supported by the government, right? Your initiatives. And my question is, what will happen if how do you sustain the project, and what will happen if the grants and especially how will the community that you supported will continue these efforts?
Thank you so much for all the questions. Perhaps let me pass the mic around to each of our speakers to respond to the questions. Mainly on how do we get communities engaged properly? How do we get communities kept engaged, and government role both at federal, national level as well as down to the local district levels. Yeah.
Pick one if it's relevant. Okay, so how do we actually put up the correct community team? So roughly about 15 years ago, there are pockets of kind of scientists doing that kind of work, but sporadically all over the Southeast Asia. So what we do here is basically we put them up together, put everybody to sit together, and then go for funding opportunities. So we managed to get first rounds of funding projects, and that's how we get started. But when we, when we are running the project, so basically we are each of us. So we have a country representative. So for Malaysia, we work with Land Malaysia. So we work with the government agencies with their resources support. For Indonesia, they work with the BMKGs. For Philippines, we have members that work with Manila Ops countries. That's how we get ourselves organized. So in terms of budget and what else? So how to work with the communities? Yeah. So for our whenever we have, I think when we work in community, I think one of the important aspects is capacity building. So every time we have the modeling communities meet roughly around 2 times in a year. So what we do here, usually we bring community users, each of the countries. For example, we are currently working on projects that try to focus on the Southeast Asian universities. So every time we meet, we will bring the city councils. We bring them. So that's how how it works. Get message passed on.
Yeah, these are different questions, but let me attempt to answer them this way. In the case of Bukit Kiara, I think it's a good example actually. As I said to you, this land was taken over for public purpose in 1975, and from 1975 1982 there was this master plan done. From 1982 to about 1992. The promise of keeping this as a greenland and for public purpose didn't materialize. In other words, government made this promise, did not pay commercial rates to the owners of the land, and so in other words, it was a lie from the very start. So by 1992, the community realized that this was not happening. That greenland was not going to be protected, it was not going to remain for public purpose. So it activated, a community action. So from the early 90s, actually. But for almost 15 to 20 years, from 1990 to about, say, year 2014, that whole period, there was a lot of engagement, a lot of letter writing, connecting with our parliamentarians, etc., to try and convince everybody that something has to give and that this shouldn't be happening. But there was no success. I mean, the land got encroached, more developments came through, and so on and so forth. So it's only in the last, I would say, 10 to 15 years, we have taken a slightly different tack in the sense that while we have always engaged and tried to engage with government and government agencies, it became very obvious that the only time you're going to be taken seriously is if you have a very strong community group, community action. So the last 10 years or so, that's what we've been doing. We've been trying to develop that on the one side. But also, you can't talk about protection, you can't talk about all of these wonderful things without data. So we realized this about 6-7 years ago, that without data and without on-the-ground information, scientifically checked and corroborated, we don't have a say. Right? And that's why we started this process in 2018 of doing on the field work. We started to get funding because obviously nobody's going to fund you, so we have to get our own funding. And over the last few years, we've been quite successful because we've delivered on the projects and we've delivered on the information and so on. So what I'm saying to you is that, but in the process, we have always kept engaged. So the park is actually organized and run by the Japan Landscape. It's a government agency which actually runs the park. Before 2018, there was a very antagonistic relationship with the people who were running it. We were very fortunate that in 2018, when I took over as president, the person who took over the helm of JLM was a lady architect, and she was very interested. So we were able to start a dialogue. And in fact, the key people with Japan Landscape now are our allies. We work very closely with them. And we share information and so on. And we have a lot of information now because we have all this work going on, which is privately funded. And so the collaboration is taking place at the ground level, but we still have issues of policy and so on you're talking about, which obviously is very difficult to change. It takes a long time to make policy changes. One of the policy things we are looking at now, which we really need to change, is the issue of buffer zones. Because I showed you that this green line is there, there's adjacent golf course, there's development adjacent to a fence line. All of that is going to affect the biodiversity. So we did a study a year ago about what it means to have a buffer zone. And then we realized that the laws in the country are very weak to provide these kinds of provisions. Right? So we have to make changes at the policy level. But we can't wait for 5-10 years for this to happen. So now what we're doing is we're engaging, we're looking at the local plans and so on which are available. There are some loopholes which you can use to be able to bring in change. And the other thing is that we also need to, because we have this information of biodiversity on the ground, we have this information about scientific knowledge and so on about the space, we can actually start to engage government agencies and say, look, you cannot give development orders here because this is the kind of effects which will happen. We have real data. We have seen, even with small changes in the environment near us, the firefly counts have gone down, for example, and we have the data, right? So what I'm saying to you is that I think there are no easy fixes. The problem is that at the government level, there are many interfaces, many levels of government, many levels of interventions are required, and we don't have control on all of them. The other advantage we had of 2018, which was quite seminal actually, was that we actually had change of government in 2018 in Malaysia for the first time. And the MP who came to become the MP of Segambut became a major supporter of our work and also supported all the different actions which we took. So we had that as well. And so some one of the changes which have taken place over the last couple of years have been because of that. The other thing is that we've also been very successful in taking and not being shy to take government agencies or developers to court when it's required to stop developments. And we've been quite successful. In fact, we're one of the only landmark successful case where the community has taken action has been with us in Kikau and Fathah. So I think you have to use every angle. You have to engage. You have to be able to take legal action if required. You also need to have the kind of data, the kind of power, the citizen science type approach to get data which is required to be able to take these kinds of actions. So I think it has to come from all sides. Thanks.
Yeah, maybe I want to add something about the role of the government in the local community. Like during the project, we always involve the government. So all of the recommendation and our intervention based on the gathering information from the community and the local government. And then the government also can support the policy development for the implementation, like the village regulation, because sometimes the community is more following the local government regulation, right? And we think when the local government is strong about the nature-based solution, about the awareness, about the nature-based approach, it will naturally drive collaboration in the national level, the government. So we make the cross-sector and stakeholder coordination with the government, and then raising the awareness in the government, and it will be more helpful for the organization to working with the community and the local government.
Well, thank you so much. I'm so sorry that we have to close the session now, but please feel free to keep in touch with us. This is precisely why Think City, WWF-Malaysia and BCG decided to come together to launch this alliance, the Southeast Asia Climate Adaptation and Resilience Alliance, so that all of us who are interested, who are doing amazing work on the ground, as you've heard from our three speakers, I'm sure all of you also have much experiences to share, together we can build this movement that Dato' Hamdan talked about in his opening address to really, work with nature as our ally, work with, whatever tools technology provides us, and ensure that our cities, our communities have that resilience. So with that, let me pass the floor back to Ideal. Thank you so much, everyone, and please give a big round of applause for our wonderful panel.
What an enriching conversation. Thank you again to our fellow speakers, panelists, and moderator. To conclude this session, we now invite Ms. Anis Muhammad Noor from BCG for an online closing remark.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is a privilege to close today's session and to do so in the company of so many dedicated voices for Southeast Asia's climate future. Today has been a powerful reminder that adaptation and resilience aren't abstract concepts, but they're lived realities, and they are being shaped every day by communities, researchers, and organizations across the region. To all the contributors, thank you for your work and for your commitment. Today was just a preview of the report, which the full SEACAR 2025 report will be launched in September this year. We hope it will serve as a resource for scaling solutions across the region. But we know that highlighting what exists just today isn't enough, and we need to unlock what's next. That's why, on behalf of SEACAR, I'm especially excited to spotlight our upcoming call for solutions, launching soon in partnership with the Global Resilience Partnership. We're looking for bold, scalable innovations at the intersection of nature and technology, from AI-powered analytics that evaluate the full return of nature-based solutions, to digital twin models that can rapidly test and optimize adaptation infrastructure before it's built. We call on all innovators, whether you are a startup, university, NGO, or entrepreneur working on these challenges. We want to hear from you. Adaptation is no longer optional, but it is achievable. And the most powerful tools we need, nature and technology, are already in our hands. So let's get to work. Thank you and have a great evening ahead.